Hello, I'm Shanine, and welcome to the Chit Chat podcast, where we explore life through soulful conversation. I'm joined today by Marina Pearson, who supports women to explore their unshackled expression. I hope that you enjoy the episode today. Hello and welcome to the Chit Chat podcast, where I am joined today by Marina Pearson, who supports women to explore and express their unshackled being. I'm really looking forward to chatting to Marina today and hearing more about her story and the work that she does with women to help them release limiting behaviours, people-pleasing behaviours, and to be the expression of who they are in life. So thank you so much for joining me today, Marina. I'm really excited to explore more about what you do. And I would love to start by asking you how you got into doing the kind of work that you do, what inspired you to explore this path of supporting women to be unshackled.
Well, it all started 2 years ago, but let me backtrack because I think it's important. I've been around for the last 15 years. I've been working in the transformation business for that long. And I've had an interesting path with it because I've changed the way and what I've done. And I think in part it was because I would find myself in a situation and then I would go, oh, this. So, for example, I worked with women to overcome their heartbreak for about 5 years, and I wrote a best-selling book, and it had been edited and distributed in 5 different countries. And then I went into more of an expansive way of life in terms of the joy. I called it the joy of being. And I primarily focused on mothers there who were really stressed running businesses and how to live a more effortless life. And it was about 3 years ago, that I had a moment where I knew that sort of way of being, or that chapter of my life was over to work with mothers. I didn't feel like it was where my future lay. So instead, I went inside and I started to explore, because what actually I started to feel like was a bit of a commodity. There are lots of people that do transformational work. There were lots of people that were in my community, and I didn't feel like that there was anything sort of different about what I was doing. And I just didn't feel inspired anymore to go down that road. So I went inside, and last year was really big for me because I started to unravel a lot of my old story. And in that old story, I realized that if not most of my life, I had lived in a very shackled way in terms of my people pleasing. And there were certain nuances, and of course it had got a lot better. But when I started to really focus on the relationship I had to my parents, how I was to other people, who I was being, especially in my intimate relationships, I realized that a lot of my beingness and what I was attracting was acquiescing, contorting, saying yes, grasping, chasing, and it would attract a certain type of man, but also it would hurt a certain type of dynamic in a relationship. Now, over time, that shifted into different things because I evolved as a woman, and it became very apparent to me last year that there was still lots of places where I didn't feel safe enough to express how I felt, what was a no, how to even appreciate a man in a way that he felt seen, heard, and loved and respected, because I was so scared that my heart would just be trampled on and I was waiting for them to do it first. And then also just being able to speak my desires and truth. So there was a lot going on for me at the time, and I felt anytime I sort of went inside and sort of reflected on this, there was a sense of gagging that I wouldn't be able to actually express what I needed to. And for somebody who is in the expression world, who has written books, who has acted, who has sung, who has um, done all of that, it's spoken around the world. It became very frustrating for me because I was like, how is it that I can do it all in these spaces, and yet when it comes to actually having difficult conversations, when it comes to opening my heart fully and just being in all of that, that I find that so tremendously difficult. And so I went on a journey, like we all do when we start to realize that actually maybe the way that we've been being towards those that we love isn't actually the most sovereign or the most empowering for you, for me, or the other person. And lo and behold, I realized that, as I said, that had been happening all my life, pretty much all my life. I remember a time, and this is actually something that came up for me, a vision of a moment with a friend who I was having a fight with. Oh, I must have been about 5 or 6 years old. And I remember just going into the chocolate cupboard and coming out and giving her a chocolate. That's all I remember from the scene. Until years later, she said to me, because I think I mentioned it on Facebook or something, we were talking about it. She said to me, I never understood why you did that because I was the one who was being really horrible to you. And you came up and said sorry. And so it was such a light bulb moment for me, a moment of, oh, wow, it was then even that I was carrying that, you know? And so, yeah, I realized that I wanted to share this with other women. And because over time, I had started to really understand what my role is as a woman in a relationship with the masculine, um, what doesn't work, what can work. And I'm still journeying through all of this. And yet I have journeyed through so much, I can see it so much more clearly now. And what's happened as a result is my relationship to my partner has really shifted and changed over time because of this. There is more intimacy, there is much more connection. And even though we have our moments and there are bumps in the road, the gagging that I used to do is less prevalent. So yeah.
What an incredible journey you've been on through understanding how you can best support people and how that's changed over the years in alignment with how you felt you've wanted to show up in the work that you do. There's a few questions that I feel inspired to ask you based on what you've just shared. And one of them is from the story you were sharing about the fight that you had with your friend as a child. And you recognized that you already had that conditioning of people pleasing and being the one to resolve difficult situations. Have you got any insight about where that came from for you as an individual?
So that's a really great question. And what comes to mind is a conversation I had with my sister. And it was in that moment she said to me, you know, our mother used to also run around her men. And I just found that really interesting because I'd never really seen it that way. And I suddenly had this epiphany where, you know, as children, we tend to model what adults do, rather than actually what we say they model. And so when we have parents who model a certain behavior, it seems to me that we just take that on without even realizing it until later. And that's kind of where I think it came from. And that would be like in her DNA, and so passed down from generation to generation. And it makes sense because as women, we had always been sort of submitted to the patriarch. If we look back to real olden times, I mean, all the witches being burnt on the stake, we were a threat to the patriarch. And so in order for us to survive, we had to submit in a way that actually was about appeasing, acquiescing, contorting, and so forth. And, there are a lot of role models where that's not the case, but for some of us, that had to be an undoing in and of itself. So I think in terms of that does that answer your question?
It answers it perfectly, and I completely agree that the modelling we receive as children from the adults around us is what creates our understanding of how to relate to other people. So I believe that we are born with the understanding of how we are, who we are, how we want to be as individuals. But what we learn from birth is how to relate to other people in life. And I think that it's that creates the conditioning of how we then behave in life around other people, not because we don't know who we are and how we should be and how we should express ourselves as individuals, but because we've been taught from a young age of how we should relate to other people based on the conditioning we've received. So I completely agree with you that having that modelled as a child, you're seeing your mum people pleasing modelled to you that that's how you should relate to other people, and then that then informed how you felt you had to behave as a child. So I also wanted to ask you about your understanding of how, as a woman, you can relate to other people and specifically men in a way that you feel like you can still be yourself, respect them as individuals, and also have a healthy dynamic within your relationships. What have you learned in your experience about that?
Gosh, how long have you got?
As long as you want. Take your time, honestly.
um, so let's start with what doesn't work. And I think that this is something that will definitely repel any kind of sovereign dynamic, or a dynamic that ultimately is one that can create more love. So this morning I actually sat down and I wrote a piece on this in Facebook, because I'm actually running a meetup masterclass next week. And these are the things that I've realized that don't work. So nagging, complaining, certainly doesn't work. And that's usually because there's a desire behind that, but we're not able to express it. So that's one of the keys. The other key is not expressing our truth. And when we don't do that, what we do is we suppress and we numb, and and so then what happens as a result, when we don't express that truth, we do other things like resent. And we expect the other person, to understand what it is that we need. And without, we assume that, and that's really, really, it's a bit like, it's a very innocent assumption. It's like expecting our parents to know exactly what we need, because they're our caregivers, but our partners aren't our caregivers. They are people who are living in a totally different reality from us. And I think a lot of the romantic, um, I think a lot of the romantic rom-coms have a bit of fault there, because apparently the guy knows exactly what she's thinking without her having to express it. And that's just BS. In fact, I would say that's actually really dangerous, because we then go off on one and they're like, what's just happened? I have no idea. Like, oh. So there's that. And then The other thing I've realized too is not putting limits down. And I think this for people pleasers is a really big one, where we just say yes. We just say yes for easier life. We just say yes to be quiet. We just say yes, yes, yes. When in fact, we're so out of touch with what our no is that we just think that it depends. There are different stages to this, and I could go on into that. But for now, I'll just keep it really simple. There's a yes that wants to be shared, but we don't even in touch with what that yes might be. We're so used to saying no, sorry. We're so used to saying yes that our no's are just so like buried that it's like so automatic. And then what happens there is that we lose ourselves in that relationship. We start to just not be able to know who we are, what we want. It just all becomes a big blur. And it's living a life completely out of alignment there. Then what happens, of course, when we do that, that's when we start to create even more of that upset. Sometimes it just comes out in a big old bit of anger, because we have an expectation that the other person should actually understand, what our no's are, etc. And then there is vulnerability, and I think all of this is vulnerability, but ultimately the way I see vulnerability is, and not expressing it, then comes out as entitlement. There is the sense of like, if I don't express where I've been hurt or what that was about, then that now becomes a place of entitlement. It's like, yeah, I'm closing down my heart and I'm not talking to you anymore. It's this passive aggressive thing. And that's felt, the other person feels it. And then finally, the appreciation piece, which I found to be so helpful. And this happens a lot, actually. And I've spoken to a lot of women about this, where we expect the guy to do it first. And actually, that's not their job necessarily. We are the ones to illuminate things for them. And they then go, oh, okay, sure. I'm saying most. I mean, I'm not saying all of them. I'm just saying most, because they're off fighting dragons and they're off hunting bison, and we're the ones that ultimately are much more relationship related. And I'm not saying that is the norm. I'm not saying that that's everybody, but I am saying it is kind of the norm. And so I found appreciation to be such a wonderful thing. So when we want something, and we appreciate the guy for doing it, he'll do more of it. But if we don't appreciate and we come from that nagging, complaining place, that stonewalling, that passive aggressive, that energy, it repels them again. So to be able to offer up an appreciation of, I love it when you do that, it makes me feel this way, and you're my hero. They just hear, I'm a hero. So I have found that to be beautiful in so many ways, because it speaks to the respect. It speaks to them being able to win really easily with you. They just want a diagram. Honestly, it's so fascinating to me. It's a diagram that they want. They literally, can you just give me a map? If you gave me a map of what I'm supposed to be doing at any given time, that would be really helpful. And so what I've realized is the very thing that we're so scared to do as people pleasers, share our truth, share our desires, ask for what we want, appreciate the man, because ultimately, and put our sort of nose in place of what works for us and what doesn't. All of this can be considered as being vulnerable. But there is another piece to this, actually, which is to be able to receive. And this receiving piece is a really important part of this too, because as people pleasers, all we do is give, rescue, if and when that's really chronic. And when we go there, being able to receive from the masculine becomes really difficult because we are so used to giving. And the challenge with that, of course, is that the masculine wants to give. They just do. They feel love by seeing that they can be of service to you. If they can't be of service to us, it's almost like, what am I doing here? There's no point. You know, a bit like, can I help you with that? No, I'm fine. I'm an independent woman. I can deal with all this on my own. Actually, what they're looking for is somebody to come to them and say, hey, I actually really need your advice, or can you help me with this? Or I just was wondering what you thought about that. To them, that's. I mean, I'm generalizing here. Okay, so I'm really generalizing because each relationship has their own dynamic, but ultimately, from a standpoint that I can understand so far, and actually having tested it out in my relationship, what I've realized is that is something that's really beautiful and helpful. And what that also does, it opens up our feminine essence for the masculine to feel like, okay, she's really clear, like, this is what I need to do. If I do that, I can win and everybody's happy. So I've found that to be so helpful. And the irony of all of this is the very fear that we have of rejection, of shaming ourselves, of not saying, of stonewalling, of feeling entitled, having expectations. All of these things, when we're not expressing, is what shows up. And so in that expression that we fear is where the alchemy lies. And I know it feels really difficult at times. I remember this one day where I wanted to share something with my man, and I was standing on my porch and I was going, I feel like I am going to throw myself off a precipice for what I'm just about to have to share with him. And it felt so difficult, but I thought, if I don't, nothing's ever going to change. And so I shared it with him, and he was really super receptive because, of course, it didn't come from a place of, well, you've got to be doing this and you've got to be doing that, or I'm not sharing anything with you. I just shared what was in my heart and what my desires were and what I needed and how difficult things were for me at times. And he was super receptive. And I said, and what I really need in those moments is, and we just had a beautiful conversation. So yeah, it's moving from what could be considered one shadow pole to sovereignty, which is all about alchemizing that shadow. And as far as I can tell, that people pleasing is a shadow. It's, if I can taught, acquiesce, grasp, chase, overdo, that's how I'm loved. But actually, I've seen that the opposite is true. That all that does is repel it. And it doesn't allow you to live a life or a relationship that is full of joy and laughter and fun and lots of pleasure. And just to receive from the man. And I mean, my partner keeps telling me, you just need to ask me. Just ask. Just ask. So yeah. Does that
It absolutely answers my question and so much more. And I really want to summarize some of what you've shared, because I think that you've expressed some incredible relationship wisdom that I think if we can grasp just a bit of what you've shared there, we can experience deeper intimacy, deeper passion, an understanding of true commitment, of true devotion, of kind of being who we are within relationships with other people. And I really just want to summarize some of the key points you shared about what we can do as women to support ourselves in relationships and also be the best that we can be for our partners. And things like not complaining and nagging, really understanding what the desire is at the root of those complaints and nags and finding ways of being able to express that. And I think what you said about rom-coms really failing us in how to be in relationships is so true. And I think we often learn unwittingly how to relate to other people from watching how people relate to each other on TV, because that's presented as how relationships are. And I think if we haven't had a healthy model of how to engage in loving, healthy relationships in our everyday life, then we could potentially look to TV and films for that guidance and inevitably fall off path. So, yeah, so I just think that part about not complaining and nagging, really finding the truth of what you want within yourself and feeling able to articulate that in a way that your partner can understand it. And then also really appreciating them for who they are and for what they can give and for what they offer, and being open to receiving that and appreciating that and really valuing them for what they can give and offer. And also allowing ourselves to be vulnerable in that receptivity and allowing our hearts to open and to be the full expression of the feminine in our relationships as well. I just think you shared so much wonderful wisdom there, and I really appreciate what you've shared.
I think the biggest struggle, though, is to feel safe enough to do it. Because the reason why we don't is because we don't feel safe enough. We don't feel that we can, that somehow what we're about to express isn't going to be received in the way that we want it to be. And so we focus on how it's going to be received versus actually just tuning in and just going, actually, my role here is to be as sovereign as possible on this one. And however they receive it is up to them. Now, you know, if we come from the standpoint that everybody's just doing their best, come from the standpoint that, and I'm not talking about, narcissistic, abusive relationships, because but that is more on the very chronic side of people pleasing and codependent behavior. I'm talking more of sort of in the middle ground, where it's a bit kind of can't quite, there's an ebb and flow. And what I have realized is that love can really heal. But when you're really stuck in, entrenched in those difficult dynamics, there is no love there. It's just trauma, as they call it, trauma bonding, where two people are relating to their trauma, but they're not necessarily their ego. They're not relating to their love and open-heartedness. And the crazy thing is, and this is what I've also seen, is we close down our hearts as a way to protect, because we think that somehow there is something to protect. But when we realize that there actually isn't anything to protect, in other words, that we are love. I can't remember Rumi's quote. There's a beautiful Rumi's quote about find where you don't let love in. It's almost like there is no other. There is only love for self that can then flow through to actually impact someone else. We are vibrating beings. So when somebody's pissed, you feel that. They don't even need to say it to you. Just like, whoa, I'm going to keep out of their way. And then there is this like crunchy moments. And I mean, I don't get it right all the time. You know, I'd be lying if I did. And I'm human after all, but I do want to learn and be a better partner to my partner, because I know that when I am, that things flow beautifully. And it's funny because we have much more power than we think we do. So I think we're more like a beautiful pot of infusion of tea. You know, we infuse our environment with our energy, and I think half the time we don't realize that because we're not really in our bodies. We're kind of like elsewhere in our heads, you know, feeling hurt or feeling abandoned. Because of course, all this people pleasing is really about the abandonment wound. Don't leave me because I need to be loved by you, because otherwise I'm nobody. And so it's really about when people say, oh, we need to heal that. The best way I know how so far is to realize that the safety never comes from anywhere outside of you. That's always within.
Mm.
Um, that nobody else can make you feel a certain way. I saw this the other day. I was like, whoa, I've been actually creating this myself. The way in which I create stories in my head and how I then create that reality. So one of the things I've also realized is that when I'm in that moment of crunchy and I'm also feeling a bit off, I can feel it in my body. And so it's a real sort of opportunity to just get going, okay, I'm in a crunchy moment. And then probably not to say much there, to walk away. Because nothing ever really gets alchemized when two people are coming from that space. And luckily, over the years, I've got much more quiet up here, and I'm able to sort of go, actually, I just need to go for a walk now. I'll come back later and we'll talk. And that's where the magic lies, in the understanding of one another, I think, is to do it when both parties are a little bit more quiet and laugh about it. I mean, I had a moment with my partner this weekend and we sorted it. It was just, I then laughed about it. We just ended up laughing about it. So it's just moments in time. But I think there are fundamental things that need to happen first, because it's such an ingrained pattern for the people pleasing part of us to want to acquiesce, to say sorry all the time, to want to be in connection all the time. That little girl in us that didn't get that when she was younger, but that can only be shifted and alchemized through love, through feeling safe in her body, and really just letting a lot of those thoughts and judgments about herself fall away. Yeah.
That's beautiful. And something in what you've said then really rang true for me. And it's the understanding that the inner work is really what changes how we engage with other people. And letting go of the expectations that other people need to change in order for us to feel safe, loved, happy, healthy, and well. It has to come from within us. We have to be accountable and responsible for that inner work. And then from a place of feeling like we can love ourselves, that we can be ourselves, I love the way you say sovereign selves, our true light, our true sense of being, of love, and expressing that and feeling able to be that in a relationship has to come from within us first. And then we can share that with our partners. And I think that is what allows us to let go of things like complaining and nagging and not appreciating our partners, because we are less in need of them to give us that fundamental feeling of love and safety and of being enough within ourselves.
Yeah, and when we don't feel like we've got it for ourselves, that's when we look out and grasp and chase and acquiesce. So for me, what I've realized is that it's really important to know that that's actually not where the feeling has ever come from, that love that I feel is coming from myself. It's not coming from the outside. So the way I feel safe, this is an interesting one, and it's one that I've practiced with now for a while. And I hopefully it's not, Well, I'm just going to say it. I realized how disconnected women in general are from their vagina, actually, and how their relationship to that part of themselves can be really cut off. And that actually, when we gag, that apparently the vocal cords are connected to down to the vagina. The vocal cords look exactly the same as the vagina, actually. So it's really interesting how they actually are connected. And I was going through something last year. I discovered that when I connect with her, I call her the conch, that she has wisdom to share with me. She also she knows what's going on. So I just need to put my two fingers down there and just connect, and she'll tell me exactly what is going on. And most of the time she'll just say, "You're safe, you are loved, you're cared for."
That's
So
beautiful.
I wanted to bring her on, actually, not me. I want to share a little story maybe before we go. This conch here is representative of her.
Beautiful.
But what was amazing about this was I was really desiring like some sort of an altar where I could devote myself to her. I was thinking, what kind of thing could I put on there? Because at the time I didn't have her. And I got off a call in the circle that I was part of last year, and I looked over in the garden and I just saw this thing poking out. Now, I moved here last year, so this house has been inhabited by other people, so it's not like it was the first time. And the garden's been an interesting one because there's lots of nooks and crannies and old things being left. And I just thought, oh, it's just a bit of rubble. And then I looked a little bit more, and then I was like, oh my God, it's a queen conch. And so she made herself known to me, and I'm not a shaman in any way, shape, or form, but I just thought, wow, that's so magical that she should appear right when I needed her the most. And I'd been asking her to arrive, but I just didn't know it was her in that form. So she is the symbol of creation. Vishnu used the conch to go to war to create that power. Also, what I didn't know is that I think it was the Mayans used it for ceremony to create, and it's also where we receive.
Yeah.
Without masculine penetration, there is no receiving of like without that mechanism, there is no creation and there is no receiving. If you can't receive, then there is no creation. So for me, that journey isn't just one about what we don't share here. It's also about what we don't share sexually with the masculine. When we're shut down, we're going to attract a totally different type of man. To the one when we're open, not only up here, but also down there too.
I think it's such a beautiful source of wisdom being connected to our body and understanding how feeling able to open ourselves up emotionally allows us to feel like we can open up physically to our partner and really allow them to penetrate us physically and emotionally. For me, my connection to my vagina is really centered in my heart. And I feel the most open with my partner when I feel like I can completely immerse him inside of my heart space, when I feel like I can completely take him into my heart, that's when I feel like I can receive him into my body. And that's when I feel that sense of us being completely one, completely connected, whole, as individual beings, but sharing that sense of connection and love with one another. And I think the vagina holds so much wisdom for us. And I completely agree with you that feeling disconnected from that physical space of our body can really cause us to feel disconnected from the fullness of our heart, because it's all one. It's all part, the body, the heart, the soul, the mind. It's all part of this being that we are. And if any part of us feels disconnected from any part of that, if we feel disconnected from what's happening within our mind, if we feel disconnected from the emotions in our heart, if we feel disconnected from the sensations of the body, we're not experiencing the fullness of who we are and the completeness of our whole being. So I think there is so much wisdom, and I'm so glad that you found that for yourself, that you found that sense of being able to connect to your sexuality, to your spirituality, to your heart and soul, and feel able to really be the whole being that you are in life and in your relationships as well. And what I would love to know is how you support other women to do that, because you found that for yourself, you embody that, you live that realization and that understanding. How do you then help other women to achieve that sense of being who they are as an unshackled being for themselves?
Well, it's an interesting one because, as I said, I've only really started doing this work. So while life has been teaching me, it's only really now that I'm coming out in the world. It's so funny, Janine, because literally, I think it must have been about a month ago that I said, right, I'm coming out again, and it was you. It was then someone else that wanted me to do something. Then I'm doing something else in July, and I thought that's really interesting. But I also knew that I was ready to come out again. So the way in which I see this happening is definitely together in a circle. There's something really beautiful about that, witnessing other women going through something similar, but maybe different. Maybe somebody says something and someone else goes, oh my God, I hadn't realized that for myself. Or having that sense of sisterhood is so important. I think it's really lost in today's society. We no longer have that tradition of the elder. I've got a really amazing friend. She's about 65. She's a grandmother. She looks like an elder. And I love hanging out with her because she's able to provide me with things that I may not understand because I'm slightly younger than she is, that she's been through more than I have. And I'm able to go to her for some wisdom and some encouragement. So what I realized is the power of the feminine is so beautifully seen and understood by other women. And there's something magical that happens in that space. So that's something that I have created, in that they will be circles of women, and then it also has a deeper dimension to everybody's healing, because you're not just seeing it from my own perspective. Everybody has their own perspective. Everybody has been through their own journey, and suddenly there's so much more richness because there's a rich tapestry of people's perspectives being weaved into the conversation. So I see myself more as a facilitator of that expression versus it being me coaching anybody ever. So my first port of call is a 6 week introduction into these parts of expression. So, as I shared today, desire, truth, limits, which would be boundaries, um, vulnerability, and sorry, and appreciation. So that it's basically those five, and within that, an exploration of where they feel that they're stuck, why that's going on for them, and how can they move through that. But for me, these are the ingredients that a people pleaser needs to sort of journey with, themes, if you will. I mean, usually you could talk about insecure attachment, and most people pleasers have that. It's like somebody pulls away, they get completely triggered, abandoned, and they have all these reactions. Either they pull away, they get upset, they take it all in, or they have this major reaction and they go out and they want to, kill that person. So, but what I've seen is that when we express, those feelings are quietened down. They don't need to come out so like a boiling pot, So I'm not here to heal the attachment per se, but I am here for women to express themselves in the way that they need to, because I think when you look at why we don't, it is all comes back down to fear of rejection. And then there is shame that's not being talked about. And shame can only ever be released when you are seen and you are heard by others, and everybody understands what you're going through. So I think one of the things that when we get so enclosed, I don't know about you, Shanine, if that you experience this, where you may feel like you're the only person going through this right now, and it feels so isolating. And as women, we need to have that community. Just like we did back in the day when men were off killing bison, we were hanging out, in the cave, doing whatever we were doing at home. So, but we had that community, and we've lost it. And so I want to bring that back. And I know it's coming back. There's lots more work in that way, but I love the smaller group work where there can be some really deep, intimate conversations geared towards inquiries. I don't have the answer, but I do know that there is a container in which, and when we are in containers, our life just seems to unfold as the container does. It's really fascinating, because I've been sitting in circle now for the last 2 years in different aspects, and what I've realized is that whatever I'm journeying with, it's kind of the theme of that month. So anyway, I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you. And to answer your question about whether I sometimes feel isolated with my emotions, I can definitely relate to that. There have been times when I felt like I'm the only one going through what I'm going through, and that there isn't anybody else that could understand, and have had some of my most profound spiritual experiences with the container of being in a circle of women. And even from a hormonal perspective, so one of the things that I've become interested in recently is how, as a woman, I can support my own hormonal balance. And what I've learned is that for me, as a woman, estrogen is really important for me to feel well. Having lots of estrogen in my body helps me to feel well. And what helps me to make estrogen is oxytocin. And oxytocin is produced through bonding, through connecting, through talking to other people. So it makes sense that as women, when we talk to one another and we share our experiences, we share the heart of who we are with other women, and we feel held and supported by other people. It doesn't have to be women, but when we feel held, supported, seen and heard by other people in our experience, it raises oxytocin in our body. which helps us to produce more estrogen, which makes us feel more well. It helps us to feel like we can be more of who we are.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, biologically, as I understand it, women need to speak to
Yes.
others
It
to
helps
release
reduce stress.
stress. So that's how we release it. Men don't do it that way. They
No.
compartmentalize. They go into their cave. They numb out. They go and play
Mm.
football. They play video games. They compartmentalize. They don't talk about it. So when we're there going, "Can you talk about it?" They're like, "No."
Yeah.
It's actually the last thing I want to do. Thanks.
Yeah.
And we're
And
like, "No, but come. You need to talk to me about what's going on." And they're like, "No, it's just going to stress me even more. I don't need to talk about it right now. Go away." And then we kind of get, "Oh no, but what have I done?" And it's actually not. It's biological. It's
yes.
actually biological. It's interesting.
Yes.
I was reading about it the other day, and it's just they need testosterone, right? So then when they spend a lot of time with us, their estrogen starts to fill up. And so, especially if they've had a sexual experience, and so because they lose testosterone when they ejaculate, and they then disappear. So it's like, I thought we had such a wonderful time, and then they've gone into their cave, and we don't know where they are. And it's because they have to regroup and create that testosterone to feel better about themselves, just as much as we do with our estrogen. And so, for me, having that community of women connecting together, I think I see it as paramount. And I mean, I've certainly benefited from it, and I see that there is so much wisdom from everybody. You know, I'm just
Mm.
here sharing what I know and what I've seen, but everybody has that capacity to do the same.
I think that's a key part of it, actually. And putting the hormonal biological aspect aside, one of the things that is really beneficial about a group of women coming together and sharing their experiences in the format of a circle is that everybody gets to share their wisdom, their insight, their knowledge, their experience, and almost put it into the center of the circle. Everybody shares their heart, and that goes into the center of the circle. And then everybody who is a part of that experience has the opportunity to take bits of what works for them, kind of like a buffet. Everyone brings something to the buffet, and everyone can take what feels useful, what feels insightful, what feels knowledgeable for them. And so, as an individual, you will have your insight, wisdom, and knowledge that will be really helpful for people. But I think your approach of opening up a container, creating a space where other women with their own experiences, knowledge, and insight can come and share just means that that experience will be so much richer for those women who are present, because it's not just your knowledge, experience, and insight that they're getting knowledge, wisdom, experience, and insight from everybody that's taking part. And that can be so powerful, because there could be one key piece, one key jigsaw piece of insight, of information that would just complete their own understanding of themselves, their partner, their relationship, that they might get from somebody else who's a part of that circle. And I just think that approach is so valuable.
Exactly. So for me, that's definitely um, part of that um, way of being able to have them, and also those ingredients, to talk about those ingredients, and to theme every week with those ingredients. And so that's how I'm actually launching something in September, um, where I'm wanting to have 6 late women who know that they are really struggling with that. They feel that they're not seen. They feel that they aren't being adored or cherished by the guy, and then there's this chasing and grasping. So whether they're in the beginning stages of the relationship, or they're still kind of dating, or whether it be that they've been in a relationship for a while, but it gets a little bit crunchy and they just don't know how to move through that. And so that's the women that I would love to be able to serve. And so, yeah, the great thing is it's going to be a beta test. And for that, there will be a very reduced amount in terms of what they get. But basically, it's a 6-week program, 6-week circle. And they'll also get a 1-hour call with me every week. And so I'm looking to launch that. And, well, actually not launch it in September. I'm kind of starting to put the feelers out. So anybody that listens to this, and if they are curious, they can connect with me on Facebook if they like.
Yeah, please share the details, because it sounds like an incredible container with the potential to help support so many women. So please let me know the details, and I'll definitely share those with people when I publish the episode.
The other thing is that there's a link. I've created a little quiz that I've created for women to understand where they struggle in their expression, so they can get their results and start to really see where they need to sort of start looking at or focus on. And I can send you a link to that because that's actually done already.
That would be absolutely incredible. Thank you so much. And I wondered if, before we wrap things up, if you have any final words of wisdom or insight that you want to share with the listeners, anything that's on your heart to share.
I think there's a deep desire in every woman to feel that connection and intimacy to her man, and a deep desire for women to be seen, cherished, and adored by the person that they're with. And when that doesn't happen, it almost feels like we go about thinking, what's wrong with me? And actually, where I think the shift needs to change is there's nothing wrong with you. There's just more seeing to be done. And you are whole, you are loved, you are cared for by the divine life. But sometimes it can feel that you're not. And so I think our job as women is to keep expanding our awareness around where we withhold love still. Because the minute it's funny, we think we look to it from the outside, but actually when we open ourselves up to that love that's already inside and who we truly are, that somehow what we really desire just comes in so effortlessly and magically. And we can just keep asking for what we want, because after all, we are the creators of our reality. Always. Nobody's doing that creating for us. We are that creating. So if we want to create an amazing relationship, then it's down to us. But not down to us in a oh, I've got to acquiesce. No, it's down to us in the sense of, what is it I really want to create with this person? And really realize that is, what do I want? What do I want to create? When I'm in a funk, when I come back to that question, I always realize it's not this, not what I'm in. And so what would the alternative be? And then just to get that clarity makes all the difference.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your heart, your story, your work, and your time with me today. I really appreciate you being here.
You're so welcome, Shane. It's been lovely.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I'll look forward to hopefully chatting to you again soon. Take care.
All right. Bye.